There are only 3 more days until Blue Protocol launches in Japan. Famitsu, a Japanese video game magazine, published an article yesterday on why the developers went silent for 2 years. Now, if you've been following the game for a while, you might remember that after the matching stress test in November 2020, there was no meaningful updates about the game for 2 years. This article is an interview with the 3 main executives of the game, recounting what went on during that time period. It's a really long read, so I've trimmed out some of the unimportant parts. The matching stress test ended in November 2020. For 2 years, there were no major announcements about the game until a sudden tweet on November 4th, 2022. Zero news about the game for 2 years. So what happened? Famitsu interviewed them on December 15th, 2022 for about 10 minutes after one of the live streams. They planned to publish this article in early January 2023, but with the network test delay, it didn't seem like a good time. As the game is releasing in a few days, the author thought people would like to know, so they decided to share it anyways. Keep in mind this interview was in December 2022. Interviewer: It's just about time for the network test. Please share your thoughts. Shimoka: I first joined Bandai roughly 8 years ago, when the projects Blue Protocol and Idolish 7 were first conceived. Despite being started at the same time, Idolish 7 only took 1 year to complete, and Blue Protocol has been in development for 8 years. After the CBT was the hardest time. We reworked the entire game. We got a lot of passionate feedback from the test. Ever since the alpha test, expectations were increasing, including expanding worldwide. The CBT was intended to gather data on player behavior and monitor the servers. We had a lot of things planned that we wanted to test. Now, of course, alpha is an unfinished product, so we were pretty laid back on a lot of decisions. There were a lot of things we didn't consider at the time. Fukusaki: Our mistake was not considering what was realistic in regards to the servers and such until CBT. Suzuki: Honestly, CBT was not received well. In the alpha test, some things were designed without much forethought about profitability, and left as is would increase the network load. The way we addressed these concerns in CBT actually ended up being a nuisance for the players. Shimoka: It was rough, the game wasn't good, the expectations were high, the team was in good shape, but to break the news that we had to remake the game while everyone was in high hopes, the team worked hard to get us to where we are now, but looking back, it was a hard time. We also received a lot of support from overseas. We came together to do everything we can for the fans, and I'm happy to see that we could restart with that energy. Interviewer: Reworking a game you've worked on for 5 years sounds challenging. What happened until that? Suzuki: We have to think of a game as a continuous project. If it doesn't make profit, we can't continue to provide the service to users. Thus, a profit-cost balance must be reached. But in the alpha, we were only thinking, let's do what sounds fun. Interviewer: I remember the alpha being received well. Suzuki: After checking the data from the alpha test, we thought, wow, these server costs are crazy. It might have still turned out to be a good game, but from a business side, it wasn't sustainable. Some restrictions make a game interesting, but too many will impact the playability. Despite realizing playability was too heavily restricted in the CBT, we had no choice but to go with what was there. Interviewer: Even if developers are using CBT as a test, players will often judge it as if that was the finished product. Shimoka: At the time, we were mainly interested in gathering data to find the balance between fun and cost. I wish we could have said that at the time. Fukusaki said to me, if we're going to fix it, let's do it right. If we're going to put more thought into it, let's do it seriously. That was a decision that would increase the longevity of the game. Fukusaki: It was an unbelievable overhaul, brought on partially from players' criticism and also from the development staff. However, we had no time and it wasn't in the budget if we were to initially meet our goal. The feeling at the time was to just release it and fix it from there. To be honest, I was feeling a bit hopeless and was starting to accept that we would have to fix the game after launch. Shimoka and Suzuki encouraged me by saying, there's still more we can do, let's do this right. I thought it wouldn't be possible to extend development time at this stage, but apparently it was fine. When I asked how long, they said something like, there's no deadline until you can confirm that it will come out good. Suzuki: The management is incredible for letting us do this. Fukusaki: Didn't they say something like the sky's the limit for the budget? Shimoka: It was definitely possible the game would be dead on arrival. Was this really what we wanted? For a brand new IP, a flagship game representing Bandai Namco, to release and get shut down in a year? Of course, we couldn't let that happen, so we gathered the development teams and the players' feedback and calculated how long it would take to fix. Fukuzaki. Shimoka's resolve really helped us out. We took about a month to plan out all the changes, and in the meantime, the dev team was told to play the CBT version of the game and candidly tell us their thoughts. Shimoka. I had a 7-hour call talking about all the things that needed changing. Fukuzaki. After that month of planning out the details, it would take 2 to 3 months to create the specifications. Only after that could we determine how long development would take. Suzuki. Of course, we could reuse things like the graphics and UI, but the game cycle was almost entirely reworked. Shimoka. Players might think, what the heck have you been doing for 2 years? In the case of weapons, it may seem like we just changed from a fusion system to a plug system, but in fact we designed an entirely new system from the ground up and removed the old one. And of course we have to completely rebalance the game because of that. Fukuzaki. We base things around core players will probably play this much in one day, this much in a week, etc. For the weapon fusion example, we estimated how much time it would take to make an ideal weapon. All the calculations for things like playtime, difficulty, and such were done from scratch. The biggest part was reworking the game cycle. Shimoka. Points brought up in the feedback became very apparent when playing the game. Suzuki. To get an accurate picture of server costs, you need data such as what maps have how many people and for how long they're there. The CBT sacrificed the user experience to lower the server costs. To remedy that, we planned all our changes by cost first, consulting with the server team and Fukuzaki first. Fukuzaki. Game cycle is an easy change to spot, but there are some changes that even NT players probably didn't notice. For example, we reworked the behavior of all skills and enemies. I really want to get this off my chest. Balance adjustments, reviewing animation cancels, reviewing enemy motion, such as how far one would have to go to dodge an attack, we reworked it all. Suzuki. It's pretty annoying when you see an enemy's attack coming but you can't dodge it. Fukuzaki. Also, huge props to the effects and visuals teams. When told that development time would be extended by 1 to 2 years, they decided the graphics wouldn't be cutting edge at the time of release, so they reviewed all of the art. If you saw the Amazon Games trailer, you might have noticed that it looks different. To be honest, I was a bit worried about breaking the news. There are people that have been working on the game for 5 years. I thought they might get frustrated and leave the project. Once I told them, they were like, okay, let's fix this. I was amazed. They showed so much devotion towards fixing even the little things that nobody will ever notice. I'm very grateful to all of them. If it were me, I might have just snapped. Shimoka. The effect team put in a lot of work to make it easier to see overlapping effects as well. And the motions of combat were also expanded upon, such as leaping off enemies or rebounding from their attacks that launched you back. We wanted to really convey the sense of action. Fukuzaki. When we showed the entire rework plan to our managers, they were in shock. The reason we were silent for 2 years was that we didn't want to show some half-baked stuff. More specifically, there was nothing to show. Suzuki. And even if there was something to show, it was just text, just explanations. Shimoka. If we did that, it'd be like, how is this any different from the CBT feedback report? Suzuki. A game is made up of separate parts that get put together in the end to make the game. Of those parts, there wasn't anything to show, so we remained silent. Fukuzaki. Showing off unfinished work can lead to weird theories and rumors, so we didn't want to do that. My apologies. Shimoka. Mike from Amazon Games said to me, a lot of games get cancelled if they need to be reworked. Just the fact that you've been given a chance to bounce back from this is amazing. Congrats on that. Fukuzaki. Mike has always believed in the potential of Blue Protocol. He said this is definitely going to be great, so we absolutely would like to work together. It's a title that Amazon Games believes in, so believe in yourselves. Shimoka. We're in a state of, I believe in you, so believe in yourselves. Last time I said that we're in a development phase gearing up for launch. Now that that's over, we're in a bug fix and balancing phase. Balancing is super important, so it'll take a while, but I'm very happy to be able to connect with fans again. The efforts of the development team is probably irrelevant to players. Players can quit at any time if they want to quit. I really want to continue to communicate though, and not just communication, but also build trust through the game. Fukuzaki. When updates start rolling out, I don't think they'll all be perfect. That's why it's great to be able to explain, this is what we meant to do, so we're going to fix it. The relationship between BP and the players is great, so I really want to deliver to their expectations. Shimoka. From release onwards, we need to amplify this feeling. Right now, there are a lot of passionate fans, and based on their excitement for the game, more people will be drawn to it. So our next task is to maintain this feeling and communication to convey it to others as well. I've seen quite a few live streams, but none of them suddenly opened up and talked about monetization. I want to be upfront and genuine towards our players. I see the live streams as a place where we share our thoughts. Suzuki. We share even inconvenient stuff. It's better than having weird rumors surface. We write the script first and then trim it down a bit, removing some stuff that, even if we explained, it wouldn't make a lot of sense at the time. Shimoka. If we meet in game, I'll also answer questions that I can answer. Fukuzaki. Suzuki has said that he has no game to play, so he's been playing BP on the weekends. Suzuki. I was playing the test until midnight. Shimoka. Unlike old games, you're not just thrown into the game. There are proper hints in Blue Protocol. Some things are more fun solo, and some things are more fun with friends. It's great that we can create this sort of balance. I also just want to make this clear because from the fans' perspective, it's been 2 years of silence. There wasn't a single person here that wasn't working hard this whole time. There are times when playing where I think, that's different from what I expected. Now, if you fix a nuisance, but you create another nuisance in doing so, what was the point of fixing it? Fukuzaki. There's a certain amount of effort required that we want to include. Some of them can be remedied with future features, and others can be solved through communication. Some things will be overcome with time. That being said, there will probably be some inconveniences that we will unintentionally introduce. Shimoka. It's like, is it an annoyance or is it a challenge that makes players want to overcome it? The foundation is allowing players to feel like they've made progress. Interviewer. Anything else you felt after hearing the players' feedback? Fukuzaki. In response to, that's all you've done in 2 years? There isn't anything to say other than sorry. Suzuki. Some people will definitely feel that way when they see the content listed out. Fukuzaki. If you just look at the amount of content alone, it's fair to say that it's not much for the amount of time it took. But it's actually quite impressive that we were able to add so many new features while reworking the core game. Shimoka. Of course, we have a lot planned going forward. I feel like these 2 years were not a waste. Suzuki. We haven't ever said that there are this many dungeons and there are this many bosses, though there are actually a fair amount. Shimoka. Even as we're constantly testing on 2 different characters, there's always something to do. I can't say much more than that though. People will think there's an endless amount of content. I think CBT is what caused this impression that there wasn't too much content. There was a lot of restrictions, so most of it was actually unseen. Fukuzaki. There's also no point in adding content that isn't related to the gameplay loop, because it will quickly become useless. Suzuki. We don't want to boast that there's a bunch of content by adding a bunch of fluff. Fukuzaki. It's important for content to add value to the game cycle, not just getting stronger equipment, but creating new strengths. It takes some time because as we add these types of content, we need to change the game cycle's structure. Honestly, it's a bit harsh to expect the amount of content that games that have been out for years have in a new title. Interviewer. A lot of games are being marketed as games that can be played solo, but you're releasing a game that is played in a party. What is your thought process on making this a success? Suzuki. The team comprises of members of different ages and different gaming experience. We get a lot of ideas from each other's experiences and opinions. Shimoka. We want to get rid of annoying barriers, anything that causes stress. Even if there are 1,000 good things, 5 bad things can offset that. So instead of just increasing the number of good points, we also want to reduce the number of bad points. Some people prefer solo play, and some people who normally play in a party also may have times when they want to play solo. Fukuzaki. I don't want to restrict people to a certain play style. You can enjoy things either in a party or solo. While there are benefits to partying, that doesn't mean you can't do these things solo. Though I think more core players can picture long play sessions because it's an online game after all. I'm a bit nostalgic for the old games, but nowadays I'm not sure if I could keep that up. It's important to allow players to catch up in a reasonable amount of time. Shimoka. Players are playing multiple games at the same time and consuming various social media nowadays. We need to make sure to create a game that does not impede on people playing other games at the same time. I think that's what the current state of gaming calls for. A lot of games are download based now and don't need to be swapped out. So I think it's critical to have a lot of presence, such as BP being played for 1 hour in a 5-hour gaming session and providing lifetime access. Now that's not to say you couldn't play 24 hours a day for 10 days straight, but I don't want to force players to do that. I mean, don't you want to play Kojima's new game? Fukuzaki. That's right, many people want to play Hogwarts Legacy as well. Suzuki. Exactly, don't you want to play Tears of the Kingdom? Interviewer. I see, so you definitely don't want people to feel like BP is a burden that requires all of their time. Fukuzaki. Between people who feel like it's a chore and quit, and people who get bored because there's no more content for them, the latter are more likely to return simply because they didn't quit because they were discontent with the game. Suzuki. Of course, we'd like people to always play BP, but we don't want to force them to choose BP. Shimoka. Please feel free to come back anytime, whether it's every day or whenever you have time. Players have their own lifestyles, and if our game could be even a small part of that lifestyle, I would really like that. Suzuki. I was hoping I clearly explained that 3 rewards plus tickets are given out daily on stream, but some people might still have gotten the impression that it's a stamina system. You can buy more rewards tickets from the shop, but the amount you can buy is limited, so I want people to understand that part too. Fukuzaki. We definitely needed to explain that. If I recall, it wasn't even in the script. It would look too pay to win if we didn't touch upon and clarify that there's a limit on purchases. Suzuki. I think after playing for a week or a month, you'll see that that's not the case. In a short 2 to 3 days like the network test or looking at the UI alone, it might be misunderstood. Shimoka. There's no use in crying that the players don't understand us if we never put in any effort to be understood. That's why we need to explain these things. And so the interview that planned to be 10 minutes was over 70 minutes long. So what did you think? Did the developers seem personable to you? I'm excited that they understand the value of communication and are going to continue to do the streams going forward. Also, what kind of BP content do you want to see more of? Guides, gameplay, stream summaries, or interview summaries like this one? Let me know with a comment, and stay tuned for a Blue Protocol Day 1 live stream.